Not too long ago, I rated every single dungeon in vanilla World of Warcraft from worst to best, and I thought as a follow-up to that and what will be probably a longer video, I wanted to do every single zone in the game as well. There are about 40 zones total, by the way, so let's get straight into it. The worst zone for me is probably the most basic pick you can have for a least enjoyed zone in vanilla, and that is Desolate. It's just desolate, grey, flat and featureless. It's also rather annoyingly at that level where you don't quite have a mount yet. So you're running around on foot and the zone is pretty massive. In reality, it's actually a pretty good questing zone and one that guides will always send you to, but when it comes around to it, I think I'd rather spam some dungeons than go here time and again. The whole centaur rep thing also feels a bit unfinished. Second from the bottom is the Blasted Lands, and it's kind of like Desolate, but we've swapped grey for red. It does have some cool moments. You've got the Dark Portal there, you've got Kazakh, but aside from that, there aren't too many reasons to go to this zone. For the most part, you're just grinding mobs to turn in for raid consumables, though with the respawn rates in the zone, if a singular other person is there, it can really negatively impact you. Overall, as far as zones go in vanilla, Blasted Lands not that great. Next up is Ashara, and I really want to like Ashara because it's such a good looking zone. Unfortunately, as we all know, it's also terribly underdeveloped, and in vanilla there are very few reasons to be going there. Also, getting around it can be super annoying due to the verticality. There's only a few ways to get back up those cliffs, and if you fall off at the wrong spot, you're going to be swimming for a long time. Also, there is the Hydraction Waterlords rep that you need to complete Molten Core, but they put the NPC for that about as far away as they humanly could. They really wanted you to run all the way through this zone and appreciate it, multiple times in a row. There's a lot of potential though in Ashara, and I'm sure one day in Classic Plus we will see a lot more done with it. Next is Felwood, and it's a cool zone in theory, but the quests here and the travel time are just so bad. You have to do the length for this whole zone some 4 or 5 times perhaps. I must have spent who knows how many hours running down this road autopilot style. It's not as bad on the whole because you have a flight path middle way through the zone, but on the Alliance you have to go all the way to the south then back up to the north again. And a bunch of the quests are go to one location, kill a few NPCs or search something, then go back, then return again, then go back. I mean, vanilla questing does this quite a lot, but there's something about the travel time in the zone and it being high level which just makes it feel worse for some reason. It's a zone that I always end up doing because it's worth it experience-wise, but it just feels like it's so much running around. Next is the first one that people are probably not going to like me putting this low, but that's the 1000 Needles. And for me, it's kind of a pass-through zone for the most part. And for what it's worth, I do play some Horde characters as well. I have leveled multiple different classes to 60 on the Horde, so I know what it's like here to quest on the Horde too. But a lot of the quests here are just running up and down various bridges and trying not to autopilot off the side of things. Also, I don't know if you've ever tried to do that quest where you kill the boiling elementals as a mage, but let me tell you, that one is not particularly enjoyable either. The Shimmering Flats is a good questing zone, but it's kind of just a quest hub where you pick everything up and then go and eradicate the wildlife for about an hour or so. I mean, it's fine for what it is, but it's not terribly exciting either. I will say Shimmering Flats at night is much nicer than during the day though. Before we continue, I want to do a quick mention to today's sponsor, Boot.dev, and pay attention here because there's an exclusive discount code coming up. Want to understand what goes into making games work? Well, Boot.dev teaches you real coding skills, taking you from a Python beginner to an expert through a hands-on RPG-like experience designed to keep you hooked and motivated to come back. What makes this different is you're learning by doing what you'll actually do at a job, building real projects and writing real scripts in Python. Not just theory or passive tutorials, but practical work that translates directly into developer roles. There's even a leaderboard page too with daily stats showing just how many people are actively learning on Boot.dev. And you can see people completing lessons in real time. I think it's a surprisingly good motivator. Seeing that constant stream of activity reminds you you're part of a community working towards something bigger. Boot also just has a ton of content, even aside from the courses. There's a Discord, boss battles, a YouTube channel, a podcast, a blog. They even have a lore section. They've really gone all out to make the learning experience feel involved above all else. You're simply not going to run out of stuff to do anytime soon. So why not have a look yourself and see what you think? You can click the link in the description and use my code Willie to get 30% off your entire first year for Boot.dev. Many thanks as always to Boot.dev for sponsoring. After that is Swamp of Sorrows, and again I think it's a bit unfinished and there could be more there than there is. It's interesting because you have the Broken faction who have escaped from the Blasted Lands and the Sunken Temple there too, but for a marshy swamp the mob density here is absolutely crazy. Even when you're running on the roads you can come across enemy patrols. Overall it's a decent zone for a little bit of questing, but I never typically spend too long here. Following that is another even more unfinished zone, the Dust Swallow Marsh. There are several quests here that just don't go anywhere, such as the Shady Resting quest story, or the end of the Missing Diplomat and the supposed rescue of Variant Rin, which just never happens. Again, the mob density here is really high, with loads of places to be suddenly dismounted by water or getting dazed by enemies. This is one of the zones where in TBC when Blizzard revamped it, it got so much better than it is in vanilla, but in vanilla it's still quite basic. The Stone Talon Mountains are also fairly low on the list for me, and they're just okay. When I was thinking about what order to put things on, I realized I'm just never very enthusiastic to come here. Even when I'm leveling Horde characters where the zone is better. I had to think about why, and I've realized by the time you get to Stone Talon, I'm a little bit tired of the whole brown aesthetic that Horde have going on with a lot of their starter zones. And it does have a bit more green and hills, but it's a lot of brown. The Charred Vale area is pretty interesting, there's a lot to do there, but overall it's a zone that I never really want to spend too long in. And I think from here on out to the start of zones where I begin to like them a little bit more, and at the beginning of that is the Badlands, which is not actually bad. Pun intended, I guess. There's tons of quests to do here. There's Alderman, which is one of my favorite dungeons. You have the nifty stopwatch. It leads through to the Searing Gorge. I mean, it does suck to get here the first time, especially if you're on the Horde, but once you have that flight path in Kargath, you're good. Probably the biggest downside of the Badlands is that one quest next to where you get nifty stopwatch, where you have to kill the Earth Elementals, and their respawn rates and drop rate of the quest item are just really bad. You know the one if you've done it. Overall though, Badlands, for how basic it is, I somewhat enjoy it. Next is Silithus, and this was a zone that wasn't updated until really late in vanilla. For the longest time it was sitting there as a complete desert doing nothing, but this is what an endgame zone really feels like to me. It's harsh and unforgiving. You have the elite Silithid hives, which are a good challenge solo, and there's a lot of quests to get done here as well. It could also be a good spot for farming gold from the air elementals, and you make your Thunder Fury here as well. So overall Silithus, for how harsh it is, it's not that bad. Feralus is a zone that's grown on me a bit over time. It used to be one of my least favorite zones in the game, but you know what? It's okay. I think one of the reasons why historically I haven't liked Feralus is because getting around it really sucks as Alliance. I mean, there's a Horde camp right on the main road, and if you're going from Feathermoon Stronghold, it's actually faster to swim than wait for the boat, for some reason. But I do enjoy that kind of ancient elven aesthetic it has going on. Diamol are a good set of dungeons, and there's a decent amount of quests there too. So Feralus, probably not as bad as I've often made it out to be. I don't have too much to say about the next one because that's the Deadwind Pass, and you very much just pass through it. I mean, there is a strength enchant you could go and farm there from the ogres, but apart from that, you're just going through. What I have to say though is I do enjoy the mystery of Karazhan just being there, visible in vanilla. It's a zone where you know very little about it and you just have to use your imagination, and I don't know why, but there's something I kind of enjoy about that. I really don't have much to say about the Deadwind Pass because there isn't much there apart from Karazhan, but I do in theory like it. I have similar comments about Moonglade really. It's a nice place, but there are very few reasons to be there unless you are a druid. In fact, when you think about it, Moonglade was like the original class order hall. I guess rogues have it too technically with Ravenholt, but Moonglade is just so much better. I wonder one day in Classic Plus if other classes could get their own order hall, kind of like Moonglade or Ravenholt. I mean, warriors do have Frey Island, I suppose, thinking about it, but still Moonglade's a very tranquil place, very fitting for druids, and it's very handy because you get your own little teleport there as a druid too. The Hinterlands is a zone that tried to push some PvP conflict between the dwarves and the trolls, and it is a fairly well laid out zone, but the difference between which faction you're playing here is absolutely massive. On Alliance, it's kind of okay. I'd have probably rated it lower if I was going off Alliance only, whereas on the Horde, this zone is absolutely crazy good. You have to do an unreal amount of grinding here, especially around the Jennifer Allure area, where you also earn your Rune of the Guard Captain. It's also in the Hinterlands where you continue a bunch of attunement type quests for vanilla, such as getting the Sacred Mallet to go do Gazrilla in Zul'Farrak, or getting the Ancient Egg at the top of Jennifer Allure, so you can later go summon the Avatar of Hakara in the Sunken Temple. I just love these type of elite quests that send you all over the world to go and do various things. I'm also a big fan of open world elite zones, so the Hinterlands Plaguelands, pretty good for me. Next up is Silver Pine Forest, and this is the first real low-level zone that I'm putting on the list, because nearly all the low-level zones are really good. The reason I'm putting it here is because I think it is genuinely the most difficult low-level zone in the game. When you're at a low level, your character just doesn't have their fundamental abilities yet. They don't have all their defensives or CC or whatever it may be you have. And in return, this zone has tons of undead who can't really CC anyway and move fast and don't run in fear, as well as roaming walking all over the place. It has a great atmosphere though, but it will definitely teach you a thing or two about playing carefully, especially on hardcore characters. Following that is another one which I know people aren't going to like me putting this low down, but hey, I've got to put things in the order I feel like, and that is the Barrens. I think in a world where I played mainly Horde, I'd have put this higher, but the problem for me with the Barrens is it just goes on for way too long. If you were doing 5 or so levels there, I'd probably enjoy it a lot more, but you don't do 5 levels there, you do, what, 8 or so? Much like Desolace, the clue is in the name for the Barrens. There ain't a lot there, but there are a lot of animals that you need to go and collect their hooves, even though many of them don't seem to have hooves, despite them being visible. At least we have the Barrens chat though, that's always something that's been there. Next is Tanaris, a zone that I like for the volume of quests it has, the Pirate Cove area, and Zul'Farrak. Those are kind of the main 3 reasons. All the way to the south you do have the doors to Uldum as well, which are really cool, even though obviously that doesn't go anywhere in vanilla. But it's a zone you're sent to a surprising amount for how little there is outside the main questing hub. I guess it is a desert though, so objective complete I suppose. The Burning Steppes feels a little bit unfinished to me, like there should be more there than there is. There is a decent amount of quests on both factions, and you're in the shadow of Blackrock Mountain, which I really enjoy. It just feels as though there should be more there in terms of perhaps elite quests or story leading back on into Blackrock Mountain. In many ways for me it's just like a worse Searing Gorge. The Eastern Plaguelands is a zone that takes no prisoners. This is where you really start to feel as though you're hitting the endgame. Tons of grinding to do, especially from that Tyrian Fordring questline. Difficult enemies, elite quests, and a bunch of dungeons. The downsides to EPL are that it can be annoying to travel to, you have all the plague ravines which are dotted around the map, very high mob density in some areas, and many of the roads lead straight into towns infested by undead where you want to go around them and then you run into even more enemies. Light's Hope Chapel is a real bastion of refuge in this zone too, and it genuinely feels when you leave there that you are fighting for your life against the Scourge all the time. Overall, very thematic zone and a good one at that. Darkshore is also on the mid-up end of the zone list here. I think it's a nice zone and I typically really enjoy the Night Elf aesthetic, but I think I've just been here too many times. And for me, I also reckon Darkshore is one of the more difficult lower level zones, mainly because you tend to be fighting animals, and animals tend to run fast and hit fast, and often not run in fear either, and that can make for a scary combination for a low level character, and especially on the Alliance side, questing always tends to take you here. There are also some interesting parts down south with the Twilight's Hammer and you trying to work out what's going on there, but overall it's a solid early game zone. Loch Modan is also fairly good amount of quests, change of scenery for dwarven or gnome characters, and the Trog quests will be some of your first real challenges. There's a mini elite zone to the northwest too, which is ideal for grouping, so what's not to like? There's also the mini quest series around the Stone-wrought Dam, and you trying to work to avoid it getting blown up. Loch Modan makes for a decent challenge before you head on over to higher level zones. Following that is Ashenvale, which is decent too. Again, I do enjoy that Night Elf forest aesthetic, but on the Night Elf you have been seeing that since level 1 to be fair, but it does really feel like a magical forest. Downsides are the amount of quests here are not that great, and this place just kind of sucks to travel through. It reminds me of Desolace in some ways, the amount of running you have to do, because you definitely do not have a mount when you're leveling in Ashenvale. But at least while you're running around endlessly, the zone is nicer to look at. I'd say Horde also have a better time in this zone because they have a flight path at either end, while the Alliance who own this territory, supposedly, only have one flight path in the middle. What's going on there, Blizzard? Either way, Ashenvale, not half bad, but it's a zone that I often only do a couple of the good quests in and then find myself moving on. The Wetlands is a good lowish level Alliance zone. Menethil Harbour is somewhere people will pass through constantly, and I do also enjoy the Dwarf Elite zone. It can be a good challenge solo, but you can nearly always find other people there. There are some quests that can be a little bit annoying, such as finding these stealthed fang creepers, or having to go back and forth from similar locations time and again, but it's usually a fairly well-routed zone which I enjoy going to. Winterspring is a very serene late-game zone, less threatening than the Eastern Plaguelands or Silithus, but not without danger. Everlook makes for a great hub in the centre, and Winterfall Village is nearby for farming firewater. There are also the Winterspring trainers too if you want to go after that mount. All the way to the south is Dark Whisper Gorge, and farming Eye of Shadows there is where I earned enough gold for my first epic mount during Classic World of Warcraft. And yes, I did buy the epic mount. Diamond wasn't out at the start of Classic, so couldn't get Dreadsteed. In fact, at one point when I was farming there, I had 2 Eyes of Shadow drop back to back, at which point I found out they were unique, so I had to go and trade an Eye of Shadow to a nearby person, then Hearthstone and go mail the first one away, then come back and they actually traded it me back, and of course I gave them a tip for holding it. It's just weird things like that make some zones memorable, I suppose. Ungoro Crater is a monster of a zone, quite literally, as it's filled with monsters. What makes this even weirder is because it's located directly in between 2 deserts. I mean, I guess don't question it. Magic, I suppose. Honestly though, there is some lore behind this. This is where the Titans experimented with creation. Not quite sure what their goal was, but apparently dinosaurs. You may remember that during Wrath of the Lich King there is a quest in Sholazar Basin where you go through a portal and briefly end up in Ungoro Crater. I'm not sure how much of this lore was established in vanilla, but it is cool to know about. Still, as anyone who's done Ungoro knows, there are a lot of quests to do here. You go and pick up all the quests that are available, and Questy makes your map look completely unreadable because everything's an objective. Always a good time to play through, and I enjoy Ungoro Crater. Hillsbrad is an iconic low-level zone. Tarren Mill versus South Shore, never forget. Good amount of quests here too on both factions, more so on Horde a little bit. Okay, you do have the quests where you have to go to the farm and then back to Tarren Mill maybe 5 or 6 times in a row, but you can often do some mob grinding on the way there, so I've never minded it too much. You also have Durnhold Keep on the Horde too as a bit of a lore section for the area as well. Next is Western Plaguelands, and honestly, there isn't really a ton to do in the Western Plaguelands when you think about it, but it's always stood out to me as a fun and interesting zone. When you get to Western Plaguelands, you really feel as though you're starting to hit the endgame. Even though you get there around level 52 or so, the Plague Cauldron quests can be challenging too. And at the centre is of course Anderhull, a city completely overrun by the Scourge, where it feels genuinely dangerous to navigate around it. Overall a fun zone which I enjoy doing. Next up we have a bunch of starter zones which I enjoy roughly the same amount. The first is Terrasfall Glades. As mentioned earlier, I think the undead starting zones are the hardest in the game and it's not particularly close. It's a fitting start to your undead's journey, but a very unforgiving one. I mean, you wake up from undeath and your first job is to go and kill other mindless undead, I suppose. Next is Durotar, where trolls and orcs start, and this is a really great starting zone. It puts you into the atmosphere of being brand new in the world and needing to prove yourself. There's no logging in and being called champion here. You log in, you get told to go and collect apples and hit peons on the head so they get back to work. It's a nice starting zone with not too many dangers before you head onwards. The best Horde starting zone has to go to the Tauren though, and that's of course in Mulgore. Very different vibe to other Horde races that are peaceful and strong, yet proud. Very zen. There are rolling hills and fields leading into Thunderbluff, which is also the best Horde city, and I really don't play this zone as much as I should have because rarely do I find myself rolling Tauren. The next starting point is for the Dwarves and Gnomes in Dunmorra. I really enjoy the snowy aesthetic here, there's loads of inns with fires and it has a really nice cozy feeling to it. That being said, Gnomeregan all the way to the west is not exactly the nicest and the Gnomes never did reclaim their home, but nevertheless it's an enjoyable zone to start off in for these two races. After that there is a human starting zone of Elwyn Forest, and this for me is just a really good one in terms of questing and for setting up the story around the Defias. From the very first moments you start your human, the Defias are almost immediately a visible threat. It's something you won't see more of until you've quested a lot more though. For a peaceful start, this zone also has some dangers too, such as the Kobold Caves with their fast respawns, as well as Princess, and of course, who could forget, Hogger. Moving on from these starting zones are some more later game zones which I really enjoy going to. The first of which is Stranglethorn Vale, and it just has to be up there for me. Probably one of the most famous zones in vanilla World of Warcraft. Absolutely insane amount of quests and grinding to be done here. There are elite quests, the zone encourages PvP due to the level you go there at. It has the Gorobashi Arena, you have Booty Bay as a city hub you're always going back to, and so much more. Again, Horde have the better travel options here because they have a flight path halfway up the zone, whereas the second flight path for the Alliance at the north wasn't added until until TBC, unfortunately. On top of that, you also have Zul'Gurub as a raid that was added in later too. In vanilla, it's impossible not to go to Stranglethorn Vale, so I'm glad I enjoy being there. The next two zones are probably going to be a bit, why have you put them this high on the list for some people, but hear me out. The Arathi Highlands is up there as one of possibly my favourite zones in the game, pretty much entirely because of Strongguard. This is a really good elite sub-zone. It's fun to do as a group, or it's a great challenge to try and solo everything, especially those quests in the Ogre Tower, which can be soloed, but you need to be very careful. Now, I will admit the whole do one quest in Strongguard, then run back to Refuge Point, or even further back to Hammerfall is kind of long, but I enjoy Strongguard so much that I'm still putting it this high. I enjoy the quests outside of Strongguard too, but overall I rate the Arathi Highlands. Beyond that is the Old Turok Mountains, and it has two things which I like. Number one is the Syndicate quests, and number two is the Elite Ogre zones. You're probably seeing a pattern here. I like to try and solo elite things. When you've leveled in this game a lot, you start to try and make your own challenges and do things differently from how you ordinarily would, and these kind of areas just push you to do that, so that's why I like them so much. The Old Turok Mountains is a really short zone, but one I enjoy a lot, especially because of the Syndicate. There's just something around them which is very mysterious and unexplained within the game. I mean, if we're talking about Classic Plus, there's content out there such as a Scarlet raid or a Firbolg raid, but what I want to see is a possible Syndicate raid or dungeons. I think this is a faction we don't know that much about, that it could be interesting to know more about. Next is Searing Gorge, and this is my favourite high level zone in the game. Thematically, it is just so good. It's burning steps, but with stuff to do in the zone pretty much. It has a ton of quests with some hard elites to try too, and you're questing in the shadow of Blackrock Mountain that really feels as though it's setting you up for the endgame. Searing Gorge feels like a brutal and overwhelming zone, and you're just constantly fighting through enemies with stuff to do at every single turn. I also find it doesn't go on for too long either. I swear you can get to Searing Gorge and be done in just a couple of hours, and for the amount of quests there, it's always worth a visit. Next is Teldrassil, and this is my favourite starting zone in the game personally. The Night Elf aesthetic is just my favourite in the game, and it is so good here. Honestly, when you're in this zone, it's hard to believe that it came out in 2004. You've got the massive trees, the rain, the music score, everything just works perfectly here. It's also not the easiest starting zone either. In fact, I'd probably say it's the second most difficult after the Undead starting zone. And for what it's worth, my first ever character in World of Warcraft was a Night Elf Hunter, so yeah, go figure, that probably has a pretty big influence on this. Still though, Teldrassil is a starting zone I always enjoy no matter how many times I do it, which means we have 3 zones left, and if you've been keeping track, you may realise they are somewhat related to one another. Red Ridge Mountains is an amazing low-level zone. It combines the tranquil lakeside town setting with real danger from the gnolls and orcs. There are a bunch of elite quests too with loads to do, and travelling through the zone isn't too bad either. You also have the gate over to the Burning Steps, which I'm sure at some point a lot of us have ventured through, only to get sent straight back to the graveyard. A bit of a lesson on not overestimating your character's power, and on the Alliance you simply can't quest without a visit to Red Ridge. The second spot for me is Duskwood. It's dark and dangerous with the Worgen and Undead threat, and there are some amazing stories within this zone too, such as the Worgen and Jitters, Mauler Dim, Mistmantle, and of course, Stitches. Loads of quests to do, not too much travel time, great hub between different zones. Duskwood just does pretty much every single thing right that it possibly could. And at the number 1 spot, and my personal favourite zone in vanilla, is Westfall. I know it won't be anywhere near this high up for many other people, and that's okay, but let me explain why. There are tons of quests to do, but the main attraction is the Defier storyline and the dead mines towards the end of the zone. The Defier storyline just flows so well from the start of Elwyn Forest to its conclusion here. And when you're first going into the dead mines, you're going through the tunnels, and then you eventually get into the whole area with the ship. It's just completely mind-blowing. In fact, I remember when I first started vanilla, a level 56 Dwarven Hunter came over to me when I was questing in Westfall and just ran me through the dead mines all the way. Why was the level 56 in Westfall? What was he doing? What was his motivation? Who knows? But I still remember it. We actually know for a fact that Blizzard spent a lot of time on this low-level questing loop of Elwyn, Westfall, Red Ridge, and Duskwood for the Alliance. So, for me personally, all these years later, it's no surprise that it holds up so well. And there we have it, every single zone in vanilla, from worst to the best, in my humble opinion. I think with something like this, you're always going to lean more towards the Alliance or Horde experience, and of course different people are going to have completely different takes. In a different timeline, I would have been that guy back in the day who was spamming the Baroness chat, but I guess just not this time around. Either way, let me know what you think. Did you agree? Would you put things in a different order? Is there a zone which I really didn't like that you think's really good? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks again to boot.dev for sponsoring today's video. All their content is free to view in guest mode, so check them out via the link below and see if it's for you. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.